You are listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my regular weekly guests, and we are all here to share the research, the science, and the strategies, as well as some of the fun, to help you to create a more active life. Hello, and welcome to this episode of Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Blytho, and my two guests this week, Julie Hughes and Seona McKenzie. We are talking about student mental health, and this episode is actually going out on Student Mental Health Day, so very, very timely. This is an important area, not just for people who are going to university, going to be away from home for the very first time, but also for parents who might be a bit nervous about their kids flying the nest and being on their own and worrying. So just briefly to introduce my guest, Julie has worked at University of Glasgow Sport for nearly 20 years, and she oversees the active lifestyles team. And it covers activity provision within the two main centres, Stevenson building and Garscube Sports Complex in Glasgow. Julie will tell us a little bit more about herself. We also have Seona, who's the active health manager at Strathclyde Sport, University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. So they're not rivals, as you might think, even though they're from universities in Glasgow. Probably in Essex, which there's a basketball or volleyball game going on. But Seona graduated from Glasgow University with a physiology and sports science degree and went on to complete a master's in children's physical activity levels at the University of Strathclyde. She's set up the first GP referral scheme in Scotland, which is brilliant, and returned to Strathclyde, where her remit is supporting students' physical and mental health through activity. So again, Seona will tell us a little bit more about herself, but both of them have a really, really key role in supporting students' mental health at universities. So, Julie, I'm going to come to you first. Just tell us a little bit about what that involves.
So for us, being a sport department, we're kind of deemed as almost a service within the university as well. So what can we provide and offer to support our students' mental health and mental well-being? I think years ago, if you're talking 10, 15 years ago, that wasn't necessarily the case. But now, sport and physical activity is huge. And there's a real, I think, understanding and realisation how big a part sport and physical activity can play and can help. And it's just now navigating ourselves through that to see what we can do to help and do our best to make things better.
And it is so important, isn't it? We all know how much better we feel when we do something physically active, and I think a lot of students get bogged down in study, particularly second and third years, and it's making sure that they've got that balance.
Yeah, so I think very similar to Julie. I think over the years, sport was seen more as just a sort of recreational exercise place that people went to, whereas now I think there is a lot more realisation about the benefits it can give to your current and future sort of physical, mental, social as well, and emotional well-being, all sort of tied in together. And I think, even things like getting a better job, getting a better degree, all of that, all has been shown to be proven by people that are active. And I think it just helps them manage their lifestyles a wee bit more. And we are seeing, again, Julie's the same as myself here, that we are seeing across institutions that other areas of the university are recognising what sport can do and how that can feed into supporting staff and students. I think although we are mainly talking about students, staff need to be supported, to enable them to support students.
It is so important, isn't it? And supporting student mental health is absolutely vital because, as I said in the introduction, a lot of them are away from home for the first time. They may well be overseas, so they may well actually be in a completely different country. They may well be away from their friends and everything they've known. And this is, I think, something that, there's an excitement about going to university, about leaving home, but actually there's also the negative side, which is suddenly you're on your own, and you haven't got your mum or dad saying what's wrong, what's going on, or your mates that. So what sort of issues are common then within first-year students? We'll start with first-year students.
I think in terms of first-year students, you have got that isolation, loneliness, a lot of the international students as well. There can be a lot of pressure. Their families have paid large sums of money for them to come to the UK to study or to finish their degree. A lot of them, English is not their first language. Even just finances, not having a bank account and practical things like that, can be quite prevalent. And also, I think, just seasonal affective disorder for a lot of international students. They come here in September, and Glasgow in September, October, you don't get much daylight, and very quickly you end up in quite a dark winter. So that can be a problem. Food, the food that they eat is very different. So all of those things, I think can affect them. And I think you do get, as you say, that sort of stress and anxiety level. Of the pressure of coming. It's this, like you say, it's a big excitement. I'm going to university and everyone expects it's going to be amazing and it's going to be great and I'm going to do all these things, and then the reality can sometimes kick in, and they're in a room either themselves or they're sharing accommodation with people they don't like, which again can be another issue, or people that are just very different to them. So I think that sort of isolation, loneliness, just not having a sense of belonging. They've maybe come from quite a good support network, and all of a sudden they're out on their own. And I think that they are the sort of key issues that come, certainly for first year students, I think, when they arrive in university.
Do you think as well, and Julie, I'll come to you for this one, but do you think as well the fact that, particularly within the UK, which is the education system I'm familiar with, certainly up to GCSEs and then with A-levels, it's a very structured approach. It's very staff-led. If you say, this is what you've got to do, this is when you're going to do it, why haven't you turned up? Text goes to your parents, so-and-so's missing from school today, where are they? And things like that. It's a very contained environment for them. Do you think that the fact that suddenly at university, they're responsible for turning up, and if they don't turn up, nobody texts your parents to say where they are? Do you think that suddenly having to take responsibility for their learning, for everything they're doing, as well as cooking, eating and things like that, contributes?
Absolutely, because the learning is completely different from school to university, and like you say, we kind of have awareness of the UK systems, and we're obviously slightly different from England and Scotland, so we've got a slight difference there. But then, as Seona touched on, the international students, I don't have a good awareness of their education systems, but you are coming from a structured, week, a structured day, and like you say, you have, the school ping the messages to the parents to say you haven't been in, and the reality is you are kind of, you are on your own all of a sudden, and you have to then, find. I think what's interesting with as well, not only the learning, is you might be coming from a small town or a small, village, and then if you take Glasgow or Strathclyde, for example, you've got this, huge city to navigate yourself with, also get yourself into that, new learning, new understanding, and, the lecturers are there to, help them learn and understand, but there's so much pressure on the person as an individual to be, taking that information in, and we all learn differently as well. And if you're not sure how you learn, where do they get the support on how to learn? And again, going back to, if English isn't your first language, you also have that challenge there too. It's huge, and I think even on to that, you probably, the student might not recognise that it's the learning that's new that's causing, a bit of stress and anxiety, because there might also be the homesickness there as well. And if they've never experienced that before, they might not even, or they might be embarrassed to even say they're homesick. So if all these little things, kind of everything that we've talked about, it's all like, all these add up, and it just becomes a cycle and a circle, and not really understanding. You're trying to learn, there's pressure on you to learn. There might be, like Seona said, pressure from the parents, but there also may be pressure on you too, because you've maybe put an expectation on yourself. I think also as well, the subjects that you're picking, 18's quite young nowadays to be deciding what you want to do as a career, whereas years ago, again, that was just how we did it and what was the next stage. Whereas maybe, the opportunity to kind of find out about universities, or how that learning is, or, showcasing to the 6 years what learning is going to be like at universities, maybe a gap where we need to address a little bit more.
But it's all the other skills as well, isn't it? That looking back, as adults, you kind of you've developed a lot of skills like shopping, like planning meals, managing money. I mean, there must be a lot of students who run out of money quite quickly because they have no idea how to budget, and they've got all this money at their fingertips, and it's like, oh, buy this, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's all gone now. What am I going to buy food with? And I think that must add in, because they don't necessarily want to go back to their parents and say, I've run out of money, but equally parents would probably be willing to help them. But there's a lot of life skills, I think, that you need that you don't know you haven't got until you're actually in the situation, aren't there? So Seona, what do you think? I mean, do you think a lot of students are coming into university kind of really unprepared for living independently?
Yeah, and I think that's been massively exaggerated post-COVID. You look at the generation are coming into universities now, during the time where they were maybe had a bit more freedom while they were still at home. They were maybe going out, experiencing new sort of things in the safety network of their friend group as well. And I think, when you're seeing students come to university now, and that experimentation's maybe happening at university, so you've got that aspect of it. I think, we see people all the time who just don't know, like you say, how to shop, how to cook basic meals. So they go one of two ways. They either live on carry-outs, or they sometimes stop eating. And eating disorders is a massive issue in university and is rising. And we've all heard on the news over recent years about the rise of eating disorders in even younger children, even preteen, teenage years. And then we are now seeing that transition into the universities. And I think that the challenge as well with universities is students that come with pre-existing mental health conditions have basically signed off from the children's services. And then there's a massive wait to get into adult services, and especially if they're moving home, so they're moving health board, so there can be this big gap where they've had full support. They've then gone through one of the biggest changes they'll come across in life. They're isolated. There's all these other pressures, and they've got no other support.
And that must be quite hard as well, particularly if they've been supported by parents, to suddenly have to, they might not know how to ask for help or who to ask for help. They might not even realise they need the help, but just be spiralling down into a sense of inadequacy or failure and everything. So, Julie, what about, I mean, we talked about first year, which is obviously a big shock to the system, but actually, second, third, fourth year, whatever, there can be slightly different issues, can't there? Because all of a sudden there's pressure to get the degree finished, to get the work done, there are different pressures, aren't there, in later years? Is that something you see?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it also depends on the degree that maybe they're doing as well. I think there's added pressures, particularly around medics, vets. And I think as the kind of years go on, there might be then a realisation, I didn't work as hard in first year and second year, and you're almost trying to catch up on yourself. And then that again, additional pressure builds and builds and builds. And how to then help them, how to support that, because they may have all the knowledge there. It's just getting it out and putting it on the paper or for the exams. But again, exams have a different stress compared to, the coursework. And if it's a very exam-based course, or, is it more, written work where it's assessed throughout can help as well, or it can change depending on, the person or the student, for example. But yeah, I think it's interesting when we get to exam periods and what we see within the facilities. And I don't know if Seona's the same. I would say there's a kind of almost a different atmosphere. There's a kind of change in atmosphere that comes in. Some of your regular students that attend may not attend during exam periods, or they may attend even more. So it's interesting to see that change. Like, we do try to offer, different opportunities, different options during exam period. We call it exam de-stress, just so we're trying to, from a sport department side, offer additional sessions or different ways of helping the students through it. Yes, it's yeah, it's interesting as the students go through their career, because you can see a real change. If you're teaching a class and your regular students come in, you can kind of almost sense the difference in the mood, and you can feel a bit stressed. And I'm sure Seona's had it as well at the end of the classes. Sometimes some students will come up and just want to talk, or a few, bursting out into tears, because they kind of feel that space is safe and they can be open. They kind of, So I think there is a difference from first year in terms of the overwhelm, but that overwhelm can continue. And I guess what would be interesting is, in first year, it'd be interesting to know if you were a first year and you found everything okay, was that the same through second, third and fourth year, or did it start from first year and it just wasn't picked up, or you didn't have that awareness in yourself that the overwhelm was there?
It is interesting, isn't it? And I think it's something that will come on to parents and what parents can do, but parents might notice the difference in contact, things that people talk about, maybe coming home more often, coming home less often, if the opportunities are there. But so how does physical activity in sport help? This is where you both really, really focus your work. So how does it help? Why does it help? Seona, come to you first.
Oh, where do we start? It's crucial. And when we say sport, I mean, yes, it might be playing competitive sport, it might be recreational sport, it might be going to a gym, going to an exercise class, it might be going in a walking group. So when Julie and I talk about sport, that's the sort of group of activities that we're looking at. We're looking at everything across the board. And I think sport, it acts as so many avenues. It can give a distraction from the stresses and strains of what's going on. It can just, the natural feel-good chemicals just make you feel that wee bit better. It takes you away from your course as well, I think. And some courses, I think they can be quite isolating, that you maybe spend all of your time with your classmates in that one discipline. And that can be quite narrowing. So I think, coming into the sports facilities or playing in a sports team, or, using one of the other activities that are on offer on the campus, you can meet new people. So I think you then can develop your own sense of belonging, whatever that may be. So I think that's quite a critical thing. And I think it's just that social element, to be honest. It's that, yes, you get the physical benefits, but they're almost secondary to the social benefits that you get from being active with other people. Even just look at Group X, the music. You get that teacher, you build that relationship with your teacher, and it is a safe space, and you do quite often get people coming up and disclosing things that they maybe wouldn't go to student support services to disclose. Some for fear of the effect it might have on their progressing in their degree. Some influence of parents, other friends, as Julie said, embarrassment is quite often a key factor that students feel they maybe don't want to disclose. And again, a lot of males, maybe feeling that they don't want to disclose how they're feeling and that they're struggling with certain things. So I think sport can bring people together.
Yeah, and that's so important, isn't it? I know, because I worked at Cardiff Met School of Sport for a while, and the sports facilities and everything they had are often, they're amazingly high standards, and everything that's available is incredible. But I think sometimes, yes, people love the fact that they can get to be active in these really, really amazing spaces. But you're right, it's that sense of belonging, it's that sense of being part of a group, isn't it, that's so important. Like you say, whether it's a walking group or rugby or volleyball or whatever. And I think that's something that needs to be almost promoted before they go to university, is the sense of clubs, is here are some things that you can do, here's some things you can join. Because I think we tend to go and they look at the accommodation, they look at the facilities for their course, but actually it's the extracurricular stuff that may well mean that oh gosh, that's interesting, I can look at joining that. And I just think it's so important, isn't it? It's like just that, like you say, that stepping away from your degree for a while and coming back.
I think it's where you see perfectionism as a massive issue with a lot of students as well. And sometimes, libraries are maybe open 24/7, and then there's that feeling, well, if they're open, I need to be there. So just maybe having something else to do It gives you
Yeah.
that broader experience of university, and you make friends for life.
And activities a bit of a leveler, isn't it? Because it doesn't matter if you're studying the kind of law, or if you're studying ice cube design. I mean, there probably isn't a degree in ice cube design, but you know what I mean? It doesn't matter what you're studying. It's a real leveler, isn't it, Julie? And I think that helps people as well if they feel out of their depth a little bit. It's just sort of doing something where, hey, we're all in this game together. We're all chucking this ball around, or hitting this thing over the net, or running from here to there. There's a sense of kind of we're all the same. We're all in the same boat, isn't there? And do you think that encourages people to talk, Julie?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think as well, it's when you get out of just your course group and you mix with others and you start talking and how you're feeling, maybe how somebody else is feeling, and then you start to realise actually this is quite normal. And then it's that sense of, somebody feels the same, and you talk about it a little bit more, and then somebody else might join in that conversation too. So yeah, that sense of support, finding others that might feel the same, and I think then you realise that we're all about the same, and maybe someone then within that group might go, well, I've tried this and this helped me, and it just kind of feeds on, and that conversation becomes a little bit more organic. But it's just kind of that's the people that start talking, but we've still got to then navigate how do we get the people who are not opening up and not talking, or not necessarily opening up to us or services, but do they know where else they can go for support if they need it? And some might have really good relationships with their parents, and some might. So there may be people who have good connections, but it's just making sure that we can, all of us collectively, make sure that people know where to signpost if a conversation does get started up, so that people can go and seek help.
Because I know from my experience, and also from talking to you two quite a lot over the years, that there is so much support available. But do you think, do people know what support's available and how to access it, or is that something that needs to be worked on maybe?
Yeah, I think that is the key. I think most institutions have an awful lot of support available there. And sometimes because we're all deeply involved in it, you maybe assume that everybody knows how to get it. One of the big projects that we've been working on over the last year within our Student and Campus Support Services, which is a group that basically has all student support services that feed into that, is developing a sort of credit card that's got a QR code on it, that takes you to a page where there's links to every support service on that. It's throughout all the screens across campus. So it's just kind of easily available, that it's a one-stop shop. You can go there and say, right, okay, I need X, Y, and Z. There's a wee bit of information about what the service does and how to get to the service, what the building looks like, who the people are. Because again, for some people, depending on how they're feeling, walking in to a building, to a stranger, and asking for support is really, really challenging. So maybe if they've had that, they know the face they're going to see when they go there. That can be useful. And I think as well, the other thing is it's not only knowing what's there and knowing how to access it, but there's also the streamlining of signposting from other support services, because sometimes students end up being sent to 3 different places before they actually get to the service that helps the actual root cause of what is going on. They might be depressed, very anxious, because they're not attending lectures because they're having to work, but they're having to work because they can't afford their rent. And there's all these different things going on in the student's background, and someone maybe just sends them to the counsellor, but what else could they do? What other practical steps could help? So certainly streamlining, I think, of signposting, because no one wants to go and have to tell someone your story 3, 4, 5 times. You want to go to the person that can help you to start with, and then take ownership yourself as well. Because it's although yes, we can give support, but we also want to enable students to be able to make decisions and support themselves.
But do you think, one thing you mentioned was, like going to a different building and things like that. Most, it's not like a school where you've got the school and you've got this, you might have different campuses in completely different areas. and many different buildings on each campus, and just navigating your way to a specific building that you need to be in might be really daunting for someone. It might be just you get lost and you can't find your way. And I think that almost needs to be more, a central place. Everybody knows where the student union is. Maybe there's maybe all support services should be there. But so thinking then, as a parent, what can parents do in advance to kind of support people going to university for the first time? Because I think there's probably stuff that we don't know we could do, or we don't know we need to do. What would you say to parents listening and say, right, this is what you need to do in order to support your little one off flying the nest? Julie?
Oh, it's a big question. Got a few years to go till that happens for me, but I'm just thinking about it. How would I approach it? I think it's just finding out about the university, and also, I just to touch on what Seona said, there's so much support and information there, but as a parent, maybe look into that as well and have that so you've got that information ready. But maybe just have conversations around about, living, cost of living, how we're going to manage, it is a different way of learning. Have you thought about that? And maybe just, depending on how the relationship is with the parent as well and the soon-to-be student, looking through, some websites like Student Minds, for example, is really useful. They give loads of top tips and ideas. And just, I guess it's kind of trying to understand as a parent, what do I think my child may struggle with, and how can we have that conversation to get them to think, because you want them to be self-sufficient, help them, how they're going to approach it, what they're going to do, and just give them some ideas of what it might be like Seona touched on earlier as well, about, if they're going to live in student accommodation, you might be living with people that you don't really get on with. What's the approach for that? What can you do? And just making sure that you've got good communication channels up and running. And as a parent, I'll be here for you. If there's something that's bugging you, just let me know and let's talk about it and see how we can resolve it. I think as well, just looking out at, once they go to university, is looking out for changes in behaviour, and signs, and again, just having that awareness of what can I maybe do to help. Where can I suggest to go to? They may talk to you openly, but if they don't talk to you openly, who do they talk to? They may speak an aunt or an uncle or a cousin or a brother or a sister. So it may be kind of reaching out within your family network of who that best person is to speak to them to. I think if you've got other family members who've been to university, ask, can you have a wee conversation and a chat and see how it goes. But it's I think as a parent, and I know Seona's got more experience of this as me at the moment, but for me, like I say, it's a few years down the line yet. Yeah, it'll be interesting.
Do you think that really getting them to learn life skills, things like how to do their washing, how to budget for a meal, how to plan meals and things like that helps? Because I think it's something that it's very easy as a parent. You just get on with it, you just do it. But again, I think it's the sort of thing that can contribute to overwhelm, can't it? For people when they're coming in, is like, I don't know how to do this, and I don't know how much powder to put in the machine or where to put it or anything like that. And it's silly things like that, isn't it? But do you think as parents as well, it's maybe finding out about the sporting activities, not just necessarily at the university, but what else is going on around where they are? Because there might be something that they want to do that the university doesn't offer. I know it's unlikely because you offer most types of activity. But do you think as a parent, just sort of finding out a little bit about what else is on offer can help? Because they say, oh, look, they do walking football. You've always wanted to give that a go. Do you think that sort of thing? Because, we are talking predominantly about how activity helps. But I think it's, for a lot of kids, it's, maybe, gosh, I'm a first year and there's all these guys who've been playing rugby for the last 3 years at the university and they're really, really good. I won't be as good, so I won't bother. So it's kind of, how do we overcome that, Seona? How do you get new people to come in and into established groups?
I think it's a difficult one, because I think we also need to remember they're adults, and we want to support them to make their own choices. We've all been 18 and we thought we knew everything. So I think there's an element of encouraging them, maybe not so just when they go to university, maybe I'm talking like younger teens, to give them that confidence, I suppose, in themselves, and empower them to start making their own decisions, as they go through secondary. Because I think if we do it early on in secondary, like first and second year, then that prevents the overwhelming feeling. And, at that age, they don't want to be their parents suggesting you should be doing this, or have you thought of this, have you tried that? Because when we were that age, we didn't want our parents doing that. So I think the parent role maybe comes in earlier on in secondary school to then hopefully get the individual, when they are then going to university, if they play a sport already, they probably are looking at what clubs are available. But I do also think there is a benefit to playing university sport rather than sport outside of the university as well. I think it brings something different. My son plays rugby, and I think university rugby is very different to rugby outside, and it's a great experience for him. So I think with the parents, it's more about empowering them earlier on. And I think also, going back to kind of what we sort of said before, is about not creating this huge, big pressure of going to university. This should be a life experience. And nowadays, things are very different. Back, years ago, people did their degree, they went and worked in that degree. It's very different now. We talked about like fourth year students, and it's very few fourth year students will do their degree, then go straight into a job in that degree. They'll maybe take time out, they'll go travelling, they'll work in other things. People change careers so many times now, and quite often end up doing something that's totally unrelated to their degree. And that's not a bad thing. So I think it's kind of helping them to understand that it is okay not to be okay. And that social media, always works against that a lot of the time. And it is, I think that needs to be embedded much younger than the 6 year at school when they're transitioning into university.
And I think it's preparing them for the whole experience, not just the academic, the learning, the specific degree, but it's really promoting everything at university that's going on, so that they get a really big experience. Like you say, a lot of people won't go straight into a job. They might just be doing a university degree because they love learning. So I think, promoting the fact, taking the pressure off the academic side of it, and saying, right, try everything, try things. If you love rugby, get into the rugby clubs. But if there's yoga, if there's walking, give that a go. Really, like you say, it's setting them up as teenagers to give things a go, isn't it? Because they may well find the one thing that thinks, actually, that helped me. And that's really important, because presumably, it's not just team sports and rugby and football and that sort of stuff, is it? It's you've got many more activities on offer, haven't you?
And there'll be lots of activities that they maybe, for various reasons, maybe finances, would never have a chance to try. Parachuting, things like that. There's so many different clubs, and all universities will have all their different clubs. And they might get a chance to try sports that they've never even heard of, never mind tried. So it's a great time to sort of broaden their experience, and they might find a sport that they just fall in love with, and that continues on for the rest of their life. And so at university, it should be about that breadth of experience, both in learning, but also all the extracurricular, and whether that's activities and physical activities, or whether it's even like clubs and societies. There's lots to an offer, and it's about finding that balance, I think, in your life, and learning those skills to know how to manage your lifestyle moving forward. And physical activity is obviously a massive part of that, and how it affects your whole well-being. So it's learning how to fit that in with studying and all the other things that go on in life, because when you come out at some point, you have to manage all that.
Because it isn't just sport either, is it? We've talked a bit about sport and everything, but there's so many other activities on offer, from the gym, group exercise, as you mentioned, but things like yoga, mindfulness. I know we had mindfulness courses going on at Cardiff Met that you could go and join, and they were really, really good. They were in a lovely little log cabin in a forest. I say forest, it was a few trees, but even so, it was middle of Cardiff. There's not a lot of forests in Cardiff, but what I mean is, it was the environment was really, really lovely, and you felt like you were in a forest. And sometimes things like that, it's giving things a go, isn't it? That really helps, even if it's not something you like. There's a boost to your mental health. Just saying, well, I tried it, I didn't like it, but I gave it a go. I feel better for giving it a go and just making my own decisions. And I think that's important, isn't it? And it's really, really good. So tell me what activities you guys do. Julie, what are your favourite activities?
For me, I like doing a bit of strength and conditioning, which is very different from what I used to do. I was more into yoga, and I've changed quite a bit, so I'm not as flexible as I used to be.
But you're stronger.
But yeah, that's why I like doing it. And that's the thing. It's like, just, sometimes changing and doing something different is really nice. You can kind of get too focused on the one thing. But I do need to get back into yoga, and I had that chat with Seona a couple of weeks ago. So she'll be on it.
Yeah. So Seona, what about you? What do you do?
I like a bit more yoga. Probably done a bit less strength and conditioning of late than I probably should. So Julie and I probably are quite a good team that we should cheer each other up on. And also, I love getting out on my bike. I enjoy my cycling as well.
It's
in the fresh air.
But I think, like you say, and one thing that's really stood out for me, actually, I think it was Seona that said it, was, there is so many different activities to try at university that it's the ideal opportunity to give things a go that you wouldn't normally have bothered with in a safe environment. So either things that you wouldn't have bothered with, or that you wouldn't have had the opportunity. But it's a chance to give it a go and meet different people, isn't it? And that, activity, like I said earlier, is a real. It's a leveler. It's a real level playing field, in that, who you are and what you do is irrelevant once you are in that activity. And I think for a lot of people, it's time when the pressure's off. Not necessarily the actual sports side of it. I mean, there are different pressures there. But when you're training, when you're taking part in a lot of these activities, a lot of the pressure just vanishes because you're focused on the activity, aren't you? And I think that's an important thing to stress. Is that something you talk about with students? Is, look, activity will just help you step away from the way you're feeling for a while, or is that something that they just kind of find?
I think a bit of both, to be honest. I think it is key. If you meet with someone, and we run like an exercise referral scheme here, and you speak to the individual, and you find out a wee bit more about their background, and that's where, if there's maybe particular trigger points in the day, that's where you could potentially try and look at, encourage them, even if it's a 5-minute walk around the block, something like that, just to sort of almost break that train of thought and be a bit more mindful, be in the moment. If you sort of it's like, if you sit down, you sort of get slunched, don't you? Whereas if you stand up every so often, you sit down, you get better posture, as we all shuffle about, and sit up better. So it's the same idea. Just by having that brain reset can be quite useful. But I think students do find, and you find that in feedback you get from students when they say that they're feeling better, and they're quite surprised sometimes, or just some simple things can make a massive difference to their life.
And I know you've both done sort of the mental health and exercise courses and things, and it's something that I think a lot of people kind of don't link physical movement and mental health, do they always? And that's something that I know you both promote, is the benefits of movement of any kind on boosting mental health, isn't it? And Julie, is that something that you talk to them about, or?
Yeah, it is. And I think some of the challenges you have, it's trying to promote and convince, your staff or your kind of wider university to promote that to your students as well. It's getting that message out there that this is just as important as the studies, and in fact it probably will benefit the studies. If you've got your mental health and your mental well-being's in a better place, you're more likely to be productive, you're more likely to learn, which in turn then, the university pass level would be higher, the retention of the students would be higher. So the messaging and the support that you want to, push out there might be different depending on who you're talking to across the university. So it's very different when we're speaking to students. I also think though with students want
Yes.
to hear from students, and you know they want to hear. And I think Seona's probably the same. Or you know, sports clubs, the members are really fab, and on you know Freshers' Week and opening days, they're really welcoming to the new students and explain all about the sport. And just touching back, I think on that too is that you're right. There's so many sports that they may not have been, you know, being able to be involved with before. There's so many options for them to try, and you're like, it's having that confidence to go and try. But I'd say our clubs are really good at saying, come and give us a go, you know, give it a try. This probably is another one because you're going back to it at schools where PE and gym is, you know,
Yeah.
we'll not go down that rabbit hole with this one, but it's just, you know, getting that message out there to give something a try and try something that works for you, because there is so many options. I think as well, like we touched a little bit on societies as well, and although we will talk very much about physical activity, but it may be something, we've got a Taylor Swift society, so it might be something along those, yeah, and so you know, go along and I don't know what they do, but they probably do a little bit of dancing and singing and enjoying them. So you're having a great time. And sometimes we will tie in with the society and do a Taylor Swift super circuit. So all the songs are Taylor Swift, and we try and get the society to come along. So it's just as a department, you know, although we are offering so many things, what else is the uni doing? How can we work with you to then help your students or your, you know, members in your society to do something a little bit more active and give more opportunities to do that? So yeah, there's so many things.
And those are sort of, and let's face it, you know, it's all movement, isn't it? It's all movement. So
yeah,
so
that's
final,
yeah.
Final words. What would be your message to any students who are just nervous, they're worried, they're kind of wondering if it's right for them? What would be your message, Seona?
Give it a go. Come along. Explore, try things. You might like them, you might not. Try something else, but immerse yourself in the university experience.
Because at the end of the day, and I think this is important to remember, the sports clubs, the activity opportunities, the societies want people to join. They're not kind of exclusive little kind of places. They want people. They need people to join. So they will be welcoming. How about you, Julie? What would be a good message?
Yeah, just give it a try, and also recognise if it's not for you, change to something else. You know, don't get stuck in one place. Try it out, see if you like it. If it works for you, fab. If it doesn't work, don't be scared to go, this isn't for me, and then try something else.
Thank you both so much for coming along. Like I say, it's such an important area, and I think, Seona, you mentioned this at the beginning, it's often where people maybe become aware of mental health issues, or they may be between two support services, and this is where physical activity and sport can be a real kind of connection for people to get some of that connection back. Thank you both so much. We've got Seona McKenzie, we've got Julie Hughes, both from universities in Glasgow, one from University of Glasgow, one from Strathclyde. But thank you both so much for coming along and talking about this, because it is such an important area for all of us, really. Thank you for listening to Creating Active Lives with me, Sarah Belitho, and my guests. Join me each week for more on how to create and sustain everyday activity, and follow me online at Fitness Career Mentor or Fabulous if you're interested in career development and more on creating active lifestyles.